Like 15 minutes.
Okay,
It's not far.
that's good. That's fine there. Okay, we have Ashley. Hopefully, I'm assuming maybe everybody has the same story coming back from work, but this was the most popular time on the doodle poll. So, you know, I hope that's good. So I think for Alyssa, let's start at 5:10. Me and Ashley are set here. We have Jamima, we have Felicia. So I wanted 5, but 4 isn't too bad. And then we can go through this. So give it 3 more minutes and then we'll get going.
Sounds good. Okay. Oh, hey, you're in a new place. Okay.
Yeah, I was moving around. So I think we're all good. I messaged Tonton David, so hopefully he'll be here soon. Gaylor, who's I said Gaylor Hosi. Gaylor too. Should be coming soon, so I'm recording it, and then Ashley is in another room and she'll be joining, like right away here. So you can definitely get going, I think.
Take it away. Sweet. Okay, thanks for having me. I think I've met everyone who's here. I've been part of a few of the sessions that have been going on, but I guess me to come in today and kind of I'm seeing two kind of goals from what I'm here. One is to share a bit of like learning and understanding that I have about evaluation, and then sharing that with and then actually doing some of that evaluation process specifically around sort of the UIP work that we've been doing together with Canada Bridges and Ike's role and shared. And so using this as a chance to both sort of to do a bit of learning, but then also do some of our like reflection on what's happened over the last few weeks and take some of the learning away from that as well. So the first part's going to be a little bit more heavy on me sharing and talking. And then the second half, though, I'm hoping is going to be more like some conversations from everyone in the group around recognizing some of the learning and seeing what we want to take away and doing some of that evaluation of what's happened over the last few weeks. So that's kind of the plan. Yeah, maybe just as a bit of a background to me, I'm not an evaluation expert per se. I have done a lot of evaluation in my time. I've done some learning and courses and things around it a little bit, but I definitely don't consider, like some people, that's their job, that's their profession, they do it 24/7. I say that's not me. It is something that I do value and I like, which I think a lot of people don't. But I think one of the reasons that I do value it and like it is that I sort of focus on sort of more of a developmental evaluation approach, and I'll get into what that means. But to me, what evaluation really is about learning, and I really love learning. And it's about learning from what we've done, not necessarily learning from books or from theory, but from learning from practice and from what we're doing. And I think there's just tremendous, like I feel like most of the most valuable learning that I've had in my life has come from experiences that I've had and the ability to reflect on those and take things away. And that's been just really, really valuable experience. And I think I see that in lots of places that often we don't always stop and do the learning from our experiences that we could, but when we do, it has a lot of value and potential. And so that's kind of the approach that I take. Different people who do evaluation do it very different ways and different styles and different ways, and even depending on the context, and we'll talk a bit about that, like there's different types of evaluation for different contexts and different needs. And but yeah, so like I think the more typical approaches of evaluation where it's like very sort of like, did you succeed or did you fail? Those things are not things I really love. And that's why. And anyway, so what I want to share today is a bit around sort of some of those different approaches and theories to evaluation, and then dive into some of them with you guys around this and try them out and see what fits and what works. And hopefully there'll be some valuable learning from the experience that's happened, and some takeaways and things about where this goes next. So I hope that sort of SOS Congo gets some useful like tools or ideas or thinking around evaluation that they can use both within this context, but maybe also use going forward. Whew, okay, that's a lot of me rambling. Maybe I know some people are at different places, but I was gonna maybe just start. It would be great just for everyone, maybe to say, if you can, if you're driving, don't worry about it. But if you can say one, like, what's the first thing that comes into your mind when you hear evaluation? What's the first thing that you think of? First word, first like feeling, first thought, what sort of jumps to mind when you hear evaluation? And there's no right or wrong answer. If your answer is like dread, then that's totally okay. Don't feel like you have to hide that, because I know that's definitely how lots of people feel about evaluation. So yeah, maybe we'll go around. Ike, do you want to go first? What's the first thing that comes into your mind when you hear evaluation?
I think of a grade. It's like grading yourself. I think that's probably the first thing that comes to mind. Felicia messaged outcomes.
Outcomes. Cool. Yeah, good one. Talk about outcomes. Is it Jamima? Am I saying that right?
Yeah, can you hear me properly?
Yeah.
I would say correction and judging,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when you hear that's very much, evaluation has this sense of like, we're scoring you, we're judging you, we're giving you a grade. Definitely. Outcomes is a great word too. Outcomes is like change. It's a very change focused word in my mind. In like what's the results, what comes from this, and I think that is definitely like a really important part of evaluation, and understanding what the change is and what's the outcome, not necessarily just like what happened, but like why that's important and what goes into the world. So that's a great word. Cool. So yeah, I mean, even just from that, you can see there's a lot of different reasons why you might do evaluation. Sorry, my slides aren't changing. I don't know what's going on. There we go. And And there's no, oh,
Sorry, it's
Ashley, you're there too. Okay, sorry, Ashley, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just didn't. I thought I had two screens going or something. I didn't realize.
Sorry if there's noise in the background, but I would just say maybe review.
Good one. Yeah, it's like a chance to kind of look back and think back. Is that sort of what you mean by review?
That's kind of what I'm thinking about. Yeah, like looking back on a project and reviewing the progress or not the progress and whatever that looks like.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, and I think that's a really important part of evaluation, is that sort of looking back and thinking about what happened and why did it happen and where do we go from here. Cool. So yeah, and like all of those answers are right. And I think like that's one of the tricky things with evaluation, is that it can be so many different things in so many different contexts. Like sometimes evaluation really is that like judgment grade. Were you successful? Were you not successful? And that has implications going forward. Sometimes it is that like, yeah, that look back, that review, saying what could we do different? What do we want to do better? How do we improve? It is also that like thinking about like what change happened and why did that change happen. And so I think a really important thing to get on the same page about when you're doing any evaluation is like, why are we doing this evaluation? Like, I think, yes, there'll be some components of all of those things in any evaluation, but oftentimes there's like something that takes precedence, something that's sort of more sort of the driving force behind this evaluation right now for this time. Like, are we doing this because, you know, our funders need to know what went well and what didn't go well so that they will want to give us funding again? Or are we doing it because we really want to learn and understand how to do this program differently? Or is it because, you know, we want to like get a ranking so that we can get accreditation for something? And all of those different reasons why like will change kind of how you set up your evaluation process and what's part of it. And so I think those are like really important questions to have when you start doing any evaluation process. And so maybe let's just chat for a minute around like within SOS Congo right now, and this evaluation that we're sort of doing around the program that's happened over the last 2 months, 3 months. Like why do we want to evaluate it? What are some of the reasons? And we can list them all out. We don't have to necessarily like narrow it down to one, but I think it would be really good. And I'm going to take some notes in my screen. You can still see my screen, can you? Yeah, sweet. So yeah, maybe think about like, why do we want to evaluate this right now? Is it because there's a funding requirement for it? Is it because, you know, there's something specific we want to learn? Is it because, I'm not sure. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys.
I would say definitely we have to report to the funders. So absolutely that's a component there. Be able to know what the money was used for, and then know to see if what we thought was going to happen actually happened. So that's just, I think, the first step there, being able to narrow down what the impact of that money was. And then next up for us, being able to learn from the experience, being able to see what went wrong, what worked, being able to see aspects of each topic, which connected with the youth the most, which didn't, and then being able to hear from the youth themselves, and then maybe being able to have some solid data for projects moving forward.
Yeah, sweet. Those are lots of things. I'm going to separate some of those out. Any other thoughts? Anyone else have anything else? Why you're wanting to evaluate right now?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I think so that we can see if change was made, so we can like, because obviously we're trying to educate, so to see if like from what we've done, if changes are happening and people are taking what we've taught them and using it. And does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a great one. I'm just typing while you're speaking. Sorry. Yep, that's really great. I think that's almost along the lines of like, are we achieving our goal? Kind of like, are we achieving what we set out to do? Yeah. I'll ask a further question. Like, it sounds really obvious, but I'm not meaning it to be like flippant or anything like that. Like, why do you want to know if you're achieving your goals? I'm just sort of trying to like push a little bit deeper because I think there's a few different reasons why you might want to know that, but I'm curious what's sort of coming up to your mind. I think it's like, anyway, I'll stop there and see what you have to say.
Are you asking me this question?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that because I feel like in anything, like there needs to be a purpose for what you do. So like I want to know that like there was a purpose in developing this toolkit, and there was a purpose for like putting in the effort and the time and the work, and you know, like I don't really care for doing things frilly-lilly and not really like having some sort of result from it. So I just think that it's, knowing that we're affecting change. And
cool. That's great. The reason I ask is like, I think that there could be like, that's totally a great reason why to know. I think there could be other things like, you know, we're planning to do this again, and we want to know if like what we did this time is what we should replicate, and that might be slightly different than it. Like you might want to learn different things if there's like a direct plan to replicate it again in a month from now versus like, I just want to understand like what our impact was. And anyway, that's just why I asked that question.
cool.
Cool. Anything else anyone has?
Jamima, do you have any thoughts? And then also, just want to welcome Tonton David. Tonton David, you're here now. What we're doing here is we're just talking about. Tonton David, are you there?
Yes, sorry for my apologies for I was rushing to catch you. Yeah.
No problem. I think next time we might try to slide it back a little bit, but it's okay. No worries. But what we're doing here is we want to look at the part of the program that we already did. So for the 2 months, 3 months there we've been together, try to understand what aspects of that initiative should we be looking to evaluate. So maybe I can let you think about that a little bit. I'm gonna go to Jamima next, and then you can be able to say your contribution after her.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, I think first of all, like to go with your question of why do you want to know if like you're doing what you were like trying to achieve, like if you don't know if you're making positive change or if you're achieving your goals, then it's kind of like what's the point, especially when you're trying to help other people. If you don't get feedback from the people you're trying to help, and if you're not trying to improve your like methods and stuff like that, it's kind of like you're just doing it for yourself and kind of just like for your image and like how people are seeing you, like, oh, she's doing this, that's great, but you're not actually helping the people. So yeah, like I said, it's kind of just like what's the point, right? And like who really wants to be doing work if there's no outcome to it, if you're not actually doing any work, you're just doing unnecessary work, right? So yeah, basically that's my take on that.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I like how you bring that like that piece of others into it, that evaluation isn't something that we can necessarily just do ourselves, right? There, we need to have input, we need to have feedback. And we're going to talk more about that in a little bit. But I think a really important part of evaluation is, so it's, you know, we're not just saying good things are happening because we say so, but we actually have some sort of evidence or something to point to that says, here's why we know that. And here's, it sort of like gives a bit of, a little bit of like accreditation, I guess, or something that we can rely on, that it's not just, you know, we did good work and give ourselves a pat on the back, but we actually know we did good work, and here's why we know we did good work. So it gives like verification or validation. Validation is the word that I was actually looking for. Sorry, it's the end of the day. My words are leaving me a little bit. So yeah, great points. Any other last points?
I think Ashley might have something to say, but she just has to wait for a little bit of peace.
Sounds good.
Sorry, I have a small window here, so
Go for it.
yeah, I just would say that I think our primary goal, I think in doing the survey for us, was to know first and foremost if you know, if the youth found the information helpful, and where we can make improvements, because this is our first time doing it, and of course there are going to be places where improvements can be made, and we wanted to kind of narrow down where those places were. And then also as well, we have, you know, we have funders. We're using a grant to do this program, so we want to be able to report to them and hopefully be able to you know, apply again.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, and it's great to be like super specific of that. It's like, yeah, we know we want to apply again, and so we want to make sure, you know, we're meeting all their requirements, we're meeting everything that they are expecting of us, that we're sort of like living into what we said we were going to do. So
Yeah, exactly.
it's awesome.
Tonton David.
Okay, I'm very happy to hear what people are saying. That is the evaluation. But I will say that again, self-evaluation is very, very important. Not just to try to see where you are not doing well, but also to know where what you are doing, it's worth it to continue to do that, or you are doing it well. And yes, it is like like I've already heard that it is important to get a feedback. Gives what you said. Um, it encourages the person's working. I mean, to continue to do the thing, or if there's any this kind of discouragement, then you can learn from that, but not to be discouraged, not to discontinue, but to learn where you need to improve. I've already heard that. And yeah, I think I will be repeating myself because you have said many, many good things there. But I will also see that why one thing, if I can add, is the encouragement that you get. Because you don't just expect to be discouraged. You need to be encouraged, too. Yeah, and it's only done not only at the end, but as you go, you evaluate yourself, and you can improve. But eventually, there's after you finish your program, it is a review of everything to see where you have achieved the goal you've set or not.
That's, yeah, I love all of that. I really love the point around like it can be an encouraging thing. I think a lot of times when we hear evaluation, it's like we're afraid of it, and we feel like we're going to be judged, and
no, it's not a judgment.
but it really I think evaluation can really be something that does encourage us, helps us to see where we've been successful, helps us to recognize our strengths, helps us to see all the things that have gone well. And even when things maybe haven't gone well, I think having a sort of learning framework to evaluation means that you can still take things away, even though maybe you haven't quite got to your outcomes that you initially wanted to or thought, but you can, like, it gives you sort of other outcomes or other learning or other things that you can recognize that you did take away. And so, I mean, no one's ever going to plan something perfectly and meet all 100% of their goals or targets, but I think evaluation can help see the value in that ongoing process, like you said, and find other things that are really useful. And, you know, maybe we didn't achieve exactly what we wanted to, but we learned these really important things that is going to help us in these ways in the future. And I think a lot of times we're really afraid of funders, especially because, you know, if we don't quite meet our targets, we don't, you know, we're afraid that like we're going to be seen as unsuccessful. And from my experience, at least, the most part, and this is not 100% of the time, funders get that like things don't always go as planned. And if you can do a really good job of saying, you know, we didn't reach our targets here, but here's what we learned, here's what we did get to, here's what we're going to do different going forward, they actually value that way more than just like having like all the right numbers, but not being able to sort of tell that whole story or share those other things that you've learned or been able to do going forward. So I think it's a really important thing to think about too.
If I may say one more thing, there's
Yeah.
evaluation is like also grading yourself
Mhm.
to see where you are at, because it's like a yard, a measurement that you give yourself to see, well, this is the progress. That's where I've come. As point also, yeah, because the yard gives you a measurement. I mean, you see whether there's a progress or not. So you can grade yourself.
Mm. Yeah, it gives you like a reason to pat yourself on the back and be like, look at all the good stuff we've done. Like this is, and that's encouraging and motivating. So yeah, all really good reasons to do evaluation. And yeah, like I said, there are so many reasons. I think it does help to sort of have them in mind. I think a challenge a lot of people fall into with evaluation is that they don't actually know why they're doing the evaluation or what they're doing with the information that they're collecting. And so they just get a bunch of information and then are like, what do we do with this? How do we tell a story? Where are we going to go? And I think like starting with here's why we want to do this. Here's what we want to learn. Here's the change we want to see, gives you a really strong foundation to then come back and say, okay, did we get to that? If not, why not? What did we learn from that? If yes, like what helps make that happen? And then you sort of know what you're doing with the information that you're collecting, or making sure you're collecting the right information to tell that whole story. And so, yeah, I think this is a great starting point. I'm going to share, like Canada Bridges, my organization has done a fair bit of work around evaluation. This is as like an organization, sort of what we've said and why we want to do evaluation. I'm sharing them just as sort of food for thought. Like we're a different organization in different contexts, different things we're doing. And I think even like different initiatives within our organization have different kind of goals or reasons for doing evaluation, but sort of overall, these are some of the things that we're thinking about. And I think you've hit on most of them, but I thought I'd share them just in case it jogs any other thoughts. So the first one is engage and center. And so through evaluation process, we want to sort of bring in those other voices, not just it be from our own perspective, and both in our planning and in our evaluating, that getting that input and that feedback about the work we're doing and how we can improve it is really important to us. We want to have evidence. This kind of touches on what Jemima was saying around like, it's not just, it's not just us saying we did good work, but we have sort of something that we can point to and say, here's how we know that we've done good work, or here's how we know we haven't done good work. And that it's, when we're bringing forward a proposal or something to a funder, we can say, this is what we've achieved over the last few years, or this is how we know we think we're going to be able to do what we're going to say we're going to do. And so it gives us sort of numbers and stories and testimony. We'll talk more about what evidence can include. I think evidence doesn't have to be like statistics necessarily. It can be stories, it can be experiences, it can be a whole bunch of different things, but it's something that's not just us saying so because we say so, or something we came up with in our heads. The deepening understanding is very much around that learning piece, and both for our own learning, but then also thinking about like how we can share some of what we've learned with others, if it's useful to them. And so that, you know, we are learning from other people all the time, and then hopefully others are learning from us. And if we're able to sort of pull out some of that learning, then that can be valuable information, both within our team for other things that we're doing, but potentially to other partners, to other groups we work with, collaborators, to funders sometimes want to learn from the work that we're doing, and that's important. And the last piece is around telling our story, that if we have good evaluation processes, we can tell our story in a better, sort of more comprehensive way because we have those different perspectives. Kind of that last one, I think, is sort of like encapsulating the first three, because we have a deeper understanding of what happened, because we have evidence, because we've brought in different perspectives, it gives us a better ability to tell our story. So yeah, those are sort of some pillars that I've been working on or developing. They're not, I mean, I'm sure they'll continue to change and, and grow as we go along. That's kind of where we're at now. Yeah, any questions around that? Cool. So yeah, once we have sort of a solid understanding of why we're doing evaluation, I think the next step is, for me, is sort of thinking about, okay, what kind of evaluation do we want to do? And sort of in evaluation theory, as I'm understanding it right now, there's sort of three kind of main types of evaluation. And they're like, each of these have like papers and theories and like people that are experts in each one of them, and there's tools and approaches behind each of them. And I'm just kind of trying to sort of summarize them very sort of high level here. And I'd say the other thing is that, like, I don't see them as like three distinct approaches. I think they're more of like a spectrum of approaches, and you probably in most cases sort of have aspects of each of them. But I think they do sort of represent different approaches that you can take for evaluation. So the first one is called summative evaluation. And summative evaluation is generally used when there's like a very known way how to do something, and you want to measure, did we succeed or did we not succeed? It's like very focused. It is sort of more that like that grading, that judgment. And sometimes that's really useful or really valuable. I think you see summative evaluations a lot of times when like the outcomes are super specific, very well known, you have really specific targets, like a vaccine campaign might use a summative evaluation target. They know they have to reach this many people in this time frame and get these things done. And it's really easy to sort of track and measure and be like, yep, hit that target. Nope, didn't hit that target. Yes, hit that target. Summative evaluation, that those outcomes and those changes are really like high priority, the very most important things. It's about like, did we do what we said we were going to do? It generally has external assessment, so you don't normally evaluate yourself with summative evaluation. You'll like bring in an evaluator to give you sort of a grade on your project, or to say if it was successful or not. And so that's how it sort of eliminates any bias or things like that. But it's sort of bringing someone in to literally grade you and say, how did we do and what can we learn from that? There still is a learning component for sure, like that's sometimes what it is, but it's really about like, did we meet our goals, our targets, and our objectives? And as an analogy, I sort of put that as like a restaurant critic. So they come in, they eat the meal, they taste it, they give you a review and a rating, right? There's like maybe some things you can work on in the review, but it's really like they weren't part of the process at all. They just taste the final meal. They just see the final numbers, outputs, outcomes, and evaluate based on that. And it is very much sort of that like grading type of evaluation. The second one, which is formative, is generally used more to like improve a model. So it's like, we have a pretty good idea how we want to do this, but we know there's some like places we want to improve or some things we might want to change. And so like we do really want to know what our, like, it's still sort of the outcomes are still the most important, but there's like some known learning that wants to be had or happened there. Like the reason we're doing this evaluation is also to get better at what we're doing, because we're going to replicate it. We haven't gotten the exact right model yet. We want to keep getting better at how we're doing this. generally there's still like an external assessment that comes in and helps to do that, but they may not just like sort of give you a grade. They might sort of be more involved along the process. They might sort of they're like, and what their role is isn't just to sort of say, did you pass or fail, did you meet your targets or not. Their role is also to say, here's places where you can improve, here's, you know, some recommendations that you want to take forward. Here's some things, you know, we talk to all these stakeholders of yours and they're really saying these are the 3 priorities that you need to work on going forward. Here's some suggestions on how you can do that. And so formative evaluation I sort of see as kind of a middle ground there, that it almost like balances some of that learning and outcomes. And yeah, the analogy that I give to that one is like, I don't know if anyone watches the Great British Bake Off or Canadian Bake Off show, where like you still kind of have that judge who's giving you a grade, but they're like there through the process, they're giving you tips along the way. They're like it's not just sort of a end thing. They're like watching you cook. They maybe like give some hints and things like that through the process to like help you become a better baker through the whole process. But there's still a winner at the end, or there's still sort of that grading or marking and sort of feedback along the way. And then the last sort of big approach or form of evaluation is developmental. And developmental really puts the priority on the learning side of things. You still need to set goals and track your progress towards them. That doesn't go away. But the focus is really on figuring out how to do something better. It's really about the learning more so than about the outcome. So like most of the processes and things are developed so that we can learn to do this better. And so it's often used when we're still forming a model, when it's something, you know, you haven't tried before or no one's done before. So there's not something you can just like follow and then check and see if you've, you know, hit all the targets. There's not established criteria for what success looks like. Developmental evaluation really puts that focus on the learning. It's also normally done internally. So you don't normally have an external person come in to do the evaluation. And I mean, all of these, you don't necessarily, like, this is just more typical. Like you can have someone come in and help you do developmental evaluation, or you can do formative evaluation without somebody else. They're not like hard and fast rules. It's just sort of like typical, I guess, is what I'm getting across. So yeah, there's no external, it's internal, but there's still input from others, because it's really important still that you're not just like doing it in your head and going in circles, right? Because you need to sort of check those biases, or check, like, make sure that it's not just like, oh, I think this went well and because it went well. So in developmental evaluation, input from others is like really, really important, because you don't have that sort of external unbiased person that's leading it. You're doing it yourself. And so, yeah, I see this as like a home cook wanting to get better, right? So they're gonna cook stuff. They're gonna share it with their family and their friends. They're gonna hear what people like, what people don't like. They're gonna go back. They're gonna try something else. They're gonna adjust their recipe, and eventually they'll work themselves in. Like they'll figure out sort of what it takes to become a really great home cook. I don't mean that as like a less professional way. Like I think developmental evaluation can still be used in professional settings, but it's more that like, we're gonna like try something, we're gonna learn from it, we're gonna take that learning, we're gonna put it back in, and then we're gonna keep going forward is sort of the difference. So yeah, anyway, that was a lot of me talking. Any questions about that? Does that all make sense? Thoughts? Other, like, I know some of you have a fair bit of experience with evaluation, so if you have other things you want to add in, please do. Okay, cool. So yeah, my question to you guys, I guess, is to think about like, of these forms of evaluation, if you had to, like I said, it's a spectrum and nothing falls like specifically in one or the other, but which of those sort of resonates with where you're at and what you're thinking for what you guys need the most?
Let's go in reverse order this time. Who spoke last? I think let's go Tonton David, Felicia, Ashley, then Jamima, then myself.
Okay. Well, I think where we are at now, I will go for the first one. We would like to knowledge if we are really being successful in what we're doing now. Uh, to know some of the outcome, so that I mean, what is the impression people giving? Okay, I think I will go for that, the first one.
Yeah, there's definitely those pieces in there. Who was next, Mike? I don't remember. Sorry, I should have paid attention here.
No problem. I think we're going Felicia next.
Felicia.
Felicia, are you there?
I am sorry. The water is boiling. I'm making my.
Oh.
I. I'm thinking. Maybe developmental. I don't know. Maybe it's because like with my work, we do like results based accountability, and we're always about outcomes and stuff. So like when I see that, it's like, oh, okay. Figure out what to do, how to do it. So, yeah, set goals, track outcomes. Yeah. So I'm learning that. I think that speaks to me.
Okay, cool. Ashley, then Jamima.
I think, sorry, I can't remember what the titles were, but I think the third one you described in terms of, you know, trying to have some learnings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does have, I think, a bit more of a focus on learning, the developmental does, than the other two, but there still is learning in all of them. But yeah, I'd say that one has the biggest focus on learning for sure.
Right. Right.
I think developmental as well, just because there's like I feel like that's the one that's like screams like there's no right way to do it, I guess. So like with what we're doing here, there is no right way to do it. So it's kind of just like trial and error, and you know, you set your goals like it says, and then just if what you did this time works out, then you do it again. If not, then you restart. And I think that's what the developmental explains. So that's what I'm gonna go with.
Awesome. I'm gonna go part with Tonto and David, part with the rest of the group here. I think that summative evaluation does, I think, look at the approach a whole lot more closely, and the models you're using and where you kind of fall in. And I think being able to identify some of those, being able to see where you're going in just a more unbiased way, just a more removed from the process way, I think can also be good. I think when you're really close to the process, like the developmental model, I think it emphasizes learning a lot, and I think that's good. There's no right and wrong way. You can redo things, restart, but I think keeping it in house, sometimes it's harder, or there's some value in also being able to hit a certain standard or hit a you know, instead of just it being too much your own kind of review.
Yeah, and like I said, like there is no right answer to this question, and I think most evaluation processes actually kind of take some pieces from all of them, but sort of have a tendency maybe towards some of the other, like you were saying, Ike, like that, like if criteria exists that like we know what's the right answer and what it should look like, then we should for sure use that and like compare and see if we're close to it or not, right? Or if there's a way to like sort of get an unbiased external look at what we're doing, then that's really good to have. I think Jamima, you made a really good point that like oftentimes that doesn't exist for what we're doing or what we're trying. And so in those cases, like that developmental side can be really important because, you know, there isn't a criteria for like, you know, what's understanding of the Congo and leadership, and there's no one who's like done a test that knows like this is what the answer is and how it should look and what it should be. And so in some places you do have to sort of use both. My personal bias is towards developmental evaluation, and that's what I've learned, because I said like at the beginning, like I really like that learning aspect, and so I'm going to share more about that just because that's where I've done lots of learning in the past. And sort of where my kind of mindset tends to go, but it definitely doesn't mean that there's not value, or that it's not that there's one that's right or wrong. It really is like recognizing where and how to use the different pieces. But so yeah, just to sort of dive into the developmental evaluation a bit, it is really good when innovation is involved, when adaptation is involved, when there's sort of an emergent or complex solution to the problem. That's where it really sort of does the best. Like I said before, there's a lesser focus on did we achieve what was expected. I mean, that's still something that in all evaluation, I think you need to track and check, but it's maybe not the number one thing that you're going for. It's like, well, let's see, like, here's the goal we set. We don't even know if this is the right goal. And that's sort of the place where you use developmental evaluation, is like, we don't know if this is the goal that we should be going towards, but let's set that goal. Let's check and see if we're getting towards it. And then we can have a conversation of like, did we not get there because it was the wrong goal and it should have been something else? Or did we not get there because we did the wrong things and we should have tried something else and that really is the right goal? And so that's where I think developmental evaluation sort of really shines. It's super flexible and adaptable. Like I said, things change as you go along. And it's generally like baked into the work. You generally less have like an external person come in and like grade you or say, here's what went well or what didn't go well, because you're still figuring out what going well looks like. And so it's really hard to have somebody else come in and say, yes, that's the right thing, or no, that's the wrong thing, because they weren't part of that process. They weren't part of the ongoing sort of judgment. What is really important is to get feedback and input from people who are involved in that process along the way, because that's where your like really good information is going to come from. So again, it's not just you saying this is what we did and why we did it, or what we learned, or what was important from this. It's 5:53. Yeah, I'm going to share this quick video real fast. I'm going to just share my other screen. It's only 2 minutes, and it just sort of gives a bit of an overview of developmental evaluation. Let me know if you can't hear it.
One of the most important things developmental evaluation, or DE, helps us to do is to assess how well we've reached an intended goal. For the Innovation for Change Network, or I4C, DE helps the Hub's members to understand how well their innovations are working to influence civic space challenges. It also helps them understand the role of different stakeholders in solving these challenges. When the regions track these changes, it provides them with a better sense of their progress and how to adapt their activities to reach their intended results. The regions can also see how their work generates an impact on civic space concerns in their region. One example is I4C members' organizing of events that help to change the behavior of youth in election voting. This has led to higher youth political participation. DE helps members to think about how sustainable their efforts are and how these activities will last after an activity is completed. The result is that I4C members adjust their plans to include actions that best align with the vision and objectives of the region. The DE questions we ask when we want to reflect on the outcomes are: how well were the objectives achieved? Were there any unplanned outcomes that occurred? And who was involved in this outcome? Who was affected? and how.
So yeah, you can see that developmental evaluation really is around figuring out like what are the activities we should be doing, which ones maybe should we stop doing, which ones should we add, and how do we get to that overall goal. Let me share my screen again. Sorry, I'm not good at talking and sharing at the same time. Okay. So yeah, in developmental evaluation, I'm going to go back to sharing this way, I guess. There's a cycle. Different people frame it in different ways. In the video, it looked a little bit different than this one that I have. But in general, in development evaluation, you go through a cycle and you can go through it many times. You can go through it once. It depends. About that includes sort of planning something, doing that activity, capturing what changed, reflecting on it, they said assessing it, and then having that feedback into your plans and change your plans. And that's a really big part, is that you sort of that plan changes based on the cycle and how you go through things. And so another reason, like maybe where you'd use a summative evaluation more, is when you don't have the chance to do that cycle. You're not going to plan and then replan and then plan again. It's like when it's something that's going to happen super fast, you just sort of plan, you do it, and then you evaluate, and then it's done, right? You don't have the times to go through those cycles or to adjust. So developmental evaluation often works well when something is sort of in an ongoing state or place. In the cycle, there's two questions that I like to think about. I don't know exactly where these kind of have come from. I'm maybe stepping outside my own expertise here, but anyway, I think I've formulated them just based off different like things that I've been reading and looking at, but I think they're really important questions that help that reflective cycle go better. And the first one is, I think, how do we know? And I think it sits at all those different, at every sort of level. It doesn't just happen at one place, but I think it's a really important question to ask, how do we know as we go through this cycle? Because that's where that evidence comes in. That's where it's not just because we say so, but it's because, and it sort of really pushes us to get input and feedback from others, or to think about other things. So if we're planning what needs to be done, like think about like, how do we know that's what needs to be done? Is it because that's just like something I dreamt up and think it's a good idea in my head? Or have I gotten input or feedback from other people that says, yes, this is a good idea and something that should be done? Or is there research out there that shows this is, based in something? Or is there, maybe it's just, I was talking to 3 other people and they all said they needed this. And so that's how I know this is something that's needed. And at all levels, I think we can ask that question. So when we're looking at what's changed, we can sit here and be like, oh yeah, we did this program and, these youth took away all these skills. But if we don't ask them, then like that question of how do we know is not getting answered. Just because we like shared information about it doesn't mean that was like captured, doesn't mean that was something they internalized, doesn't mean that was something that they're going to use going forward, doesn't mean that like bigger change that we really want to see is actually going to happen. And so that how we know question, I think, is really important to ask all the way through. The other one that I think is important to ask is, what should we share? And that sort of comes down to back to that question of, why are we doing this? And what are we doing with that information that we're collecting? So we can sit here in this group of 5 people and have all these good conversations about what we learned. But if that doesn't go anywhere from here, then it's not really like that useful, right? I mean, it is useful for the 5 of us maybe who are part of that conversation, or the like few bits that we remember. But if we're not sort of sharing it intentionally with people, then it sort of stops within that group and we don't see the ability. And again, I think that's a question that can be answered at all of those stages. Like when we do planning, who do we need to share that planning with, right? Like who needs to know what's happening, who needs to be involved with which parts. And yeah, when we share those outcomes, like maybe those are things that funders want to know. If it's something we learned, maybe that's something, we want to share between SOS Congo and Canada Bridges, because I mean, that's essentially what I'm doing here, is like sharing some of the learning that I've done through evaluation with Canada Bridges and sharing it with you. And as you guys develop your evaluation processes, like maybe there's the others that you want to share that with. And so I think that what should we share question is really important. to think through. I'm going to go a bit quicker. So yeah, the two questions. So the first one, how do we know, is around evidence. Evidence can be a whole bunch of different things. Discussions, conversations, knowledge that we hold, research, statistics, surveys, interviews. I think a really good point is that like a mixture of both qualitative and quantitative information generally gives the strongest evidence. So if we just have numbers, so like this many youth participated, this percentage said they benefited from the program, but we don't have anything to sort of like deepen that story or say like, you know, how did that actually really affect them, or what did they do with that, like, you know, that knowledge that they took forward, then we're missing like a really important part of the story. And then on the flip side, if we only have sort of qualitative evidence, like, you know, so and so said that this was really great experience, they, you know, are able to go and do all these things in their community, we don't really get to know the like scope or scale. Like, yeah, that one person had a really good experience they were able to tell us about, but like, did everybody involved have that, or were they just like one person that really benefited from it, or was that something that everyone really benefited from? Or like, yeah, they said they like someone said, you know, that this like helped their family, but did it help them like a little bit? Did it help them a big bit? Like, how do we know, how do we sort of put some quantity to what we're saying is also really important. And so I think in really good evaluation, we have a mixture of both qualitative information that we're basing things off of and quantitative information. I had a really interesting conversation with a funder a couple of weeks ago, actually, who we've worked with for a number of years. And we're just getting ready to sort of report on our last funding and then ask for some new funding. And I was super surprised. Her feedback was like, the qualitative part, like, we really appreciate the qualitative parts of your reports. And I'd worried because I was like, oh, we don't put enough numbers in, we don't have like really good data. And she said, like, when I go into the board and I like talk about the impact, like, I've got stories that I can share. I've got like, I contextualize what's happening, and I can share that really well. She said some people report on it, it's just numbers, and it's really hard for me to like take that and give that as a story to someone, because I don't really like, it's really hard to fully understand what those numbers mean, or, you know, put a face to the numbers. And so I think it was the first time I'd like ever had a funder be like, we really appreciate that, the like qualitative side. And so I think a good mix is good, but every funder is different, and that doesn't mean all funders want qualitative. Some funders just want numbers. So yeah, I think there's something in the chat. I can't see the chat while I'm talking. It's just flashed at me. How do I?
Felicia said that's the same for me and my agency.
Yeah, sorry, I was just when you were talking about how they like having those like stories to go back with. Sometimes they really appreciate that. They hear that and was like, yeah, like those stories are what makes the difference. It's not always about just the numbers.
Yeah, and I think like sometimes we put pressure on ourselves to always give numbers, and that's not necessarily what's needed or wanted. And so I think that's like a really important conversation to like have with people to know what are they looking for to know, and then have that sort of feed what we're going. Yeah, question to you guys is, what evidence do you guys have as SOS Congo, just in all this process? We're going to dive into the like actual process later, but what are some of the pieces of evidence that you can draw on to do this evaluation?
Is this a good time to share the survey results?
Yeah, you can. I think people know, like, actually don't share them yet, but the survey is I think, yes, okay. Let's just name the survey as,
gotcha.
Yeah, as like, that is a really great piece of evidence, like really great evidence that you've had, I think 8 or 9 youth fill out the survey, and so you've got their feedback, which is awesome. But that's just like one type of evidence. What other types of evidence do you have that we could draw off of in this evaluation?
I also have stories. I did an interview kind of with each of the participants in in the program. So I think we have those two there, and we do have some statistics as well in terms of attendance and who was showing up and how things were going there.
Perfect. Yeah, those are all super valuable things. I think like you were checking in with people as you went along too, and like getting feedback, and like that's super valuable evidence that like shouldn't necessarily be like excluded because it wasn't part of a formal evaluation process. Like that does form how you understand and what you know about this program. We'll get into a little bit, like I think there's like some questions like making sure that we're using like those things in ways and people are comfortable with us using information they've shared with us in certain ways, and how that's being shared. But it is evidence that you have, and you might have to think about exactly how you use it. Like you don't want to necessarily like be like, so and so said this, when they like thought they were just having a conversation with you and didn't realize you were going to be using it in a funding report. But maybe there's ways that says like, you know, we had conversations with members of youth, here were some of the ideas that came out of those conversations, and maybe that's an okay way to share that information. Yeah, other thoughts on evidence that you guys have that could draw off of? I think your own individual experiences, like everyone who was part of this, like was in those sessions with people in the group and like saw different things, like observed different things, like knows about what went into the planning or organizing for that to happen. And that's all really valuable information or evidence. So like I've been preaching a lot, I think, on like bringing in other people's perspectives, but your own experiences are important too. So don't forget about those. Cool. And then the second question around what should we share? Again, I think I've already talked about this mostly. We can share sort of at all those different levels. There's lots of different ways that I think learning can be shared. Like it can be through formal reports and things like that, but it can also be through, you know, through discussions that you have with other people. It can be through presentations like I'm doing sort of now. I'm sharing some of the learning that I've done in evaluation. It could be through blog posts or videos or podcasts. You could be creative with how you share information. Whoever, like that organization of the video I just shared, they shared some of their learning about developmental evaluation in a video with others. So there's lots of different ways that you can share learning, and it like this also then comes back to sort of that why we're doing this evaluation and who might we want to share stuff with, and why do we want to do that. I think internal like documents or reports, like I'm taking notes in this PowerPoint, like that's a way like you could share this with somebody else. If you're going to do this program again in, you know, next year and get funding to do it, then maybe whoever is, you know, facilitating, you share this PowerPoint that has these notes that we're taking today with them. There's a lot of different ways that you can share. And then, like I said, it's really important to think about why you would share something and ensure that there's that permission to share the information and where it's come from, making sure you're not sort of naming people or sharing things that they shared they thought was sharing with you personally, and then now it's like in a funding report and they read it, or that gets put up on a website and they're like, wait, I thought I was just telling you that. It's like that's like something you want to be thinking about in how you share information and whose stories. And I mean, by the name of your organization, I know you're super conscious about that, but it's something to think about in evaluation as well. So yeah, any thoughts on like what you guys need to share and with who right now? So we've already said funders is something. Are there other things that needs to be shared?
I think being able to share with other stakeholders, I think just letting the community know what we went through, how the training project was. I'm not sure if that can be a video or I'm not sure how we can bring the larger community into kind of this discussion. Like we're talking about leadership training, we're talking about strategic plans for our community. This is how far we got, this is what we've learned thus far. I think that could be super interesting. I know that we have to learn for us, our own purposes, trying to do it again, but also I think that little bit of accountability to the community, to them as stakeholders, maybe not directly, but maybe they'll be more directly involved in the future, or different things like that.
Cool. Yeah, that's great. I mean, even just like building credibility and, like you said, accountability, like sharing some of what you've learned is a really good way to do that. And, you know, have people know what's been going on and how things have been going. Any other thoughts from anyone about things that you'd want or need to share from this work? Do you guys have, like, I know you guys have funder that you're reporting to. Do they have like any specific criteria or things that they need to be reporting on, or is it more just like tell us what you want to tell us? Like every funder is a little bit different. Yeah, I don't know if you guys even have a sense of now, like, is there super numbers, targets? Is it more like we want to hear stories? Is it?
Ashley, sorry, Ashley was talking. 1 second.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, the report that we've been having to work on, it's a little bit of both. Like we have targets that we outlined in our application, which they want to hear specifics about whether we met those targets. But then they also have space where, you know, they want to hear impact stories and stuff along those lines.
Everything. Great. Okay, cool. That's good to know. Okay. I thought we might just take a quick break because I've been talking a lot and I don't know if people need a quick break. If and like we said, we do have a survey. I'm going to share it in the chat. I think I'm going to stop sharing for a second so I can see the chat. Yeah, let's maybe take like a 10-minute break, and if you need to get up or do stuff or stuff like that, you can do that. We'll come back in 10 minutes, but maybe take a quick look through the survey while you're on break, and yeah, see if there's any key themes or trends in the responses that you see. Think about like how the responses fit with what you experienced. Was there anything that surprised you? Was it sort of along the lines of what you were expecting? And just kind of take a skim through what people have written. Is that okay? And then we'll come back at like 6:25. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing and put that in the chat, and then we'll come back. Oh. It says network disconnect. Let me see. It might be because I have it open. Let me try to close it and then try and attach it. There we go. Okay. Are people back? We're good to go.
Sorry, I was on mute. My bad. I was talking in French. So during the break, we got a call from Lavi and Daniel. Lavi might try to join us back up. He just said he had a situation earlier. Papa Daniel, comment ça va?
Ah, ça va très bien. Et vous-même?
Oui, on est là, on est là. Donc, on est juste en train de faire peut-être, donc, on est en train d'aller en profondeur là pour un peu comprendre les différents styles d'évaluation. Parce qu'il y a de différents styles, c'est pas juste, ben, il y a de différentes manières de demander des questions là. Donc, on a eu une présentation là de la part de Alessa qui a un peu expliqué les différents types ou bien les différentes manières là. Maintenant, on est en train de voir les réponses de quelques jeunes, les réponses comment les jeunes ont trouvé le programme, l'information là-bas, et puis on va apprendre comment mettre ça dans des rapports. Donc, quand il y a le moment à traduire, je vais traduire, mais en effet, c'est ça. J'ai enregistré la séance d'aujourd'hui aussi, donc je vais postuler ça sur YouTube là après. Tu peux voir tout ce qui a été dit oui, avant là. Mais pour l'instant, on est là.
D'accord, d'accord.
Oh, sorry, Alyssa, I just gave
It's okay. I understood everything you said.
Okay, good stuff.
I was with you.
Okay, good stuff.
I don't know if I can speak in French right now. My brain is very tired. But désolé, Danielle.
Non, ça va.
Yeah, so I think, this next part is to just sort of dive into this evaluation cycle and sort of, like Ike was just saying, bring out like what do we want to capture and reflect. I'm going to go through sort of all 4 stages. I'm going to go quite quickly through the first plan and do stage just to sort of bring everyone on the same page. But I want to really focus on the capture, what changed as a result, and the reflect, what did we learn. But I think it's good to just sort of get all on the same page with the plan and what we think needed to be done and what happened, just so that we're all coming from the same place. So plan, what was supposed to happen. And I think when we think about this, we can think about both objectives and goals. And I've taken this from a document Ike gave me around what the unveiling, like the youth potential part was like what his goals were for this. I think, I don't know if this is the same as the goals that maybe were in a funding report, or maybe there's other goals, or if these are like exactly the best wording for goals, but it's a starting point at least. But then there's also, when you talk about planning, it's also like the activities, like what are we actually going to do to get us there? And so I want to sort of put ourselves in the sense, we're not saying what did happen, we're saying what was supposed to happen, like what was our original intent when we started all of this out. And then we'll come and say, okay, what actually happened? But maybe take a quick look through there and think, are there like big things that are missing in terms of objectives or goals or outcomes, and what you thought was supposed to happen? Or activities. I know the activities are definitely missing because I was not part of a lot of what happened, and I think there's like, you can take that away, I think, and like activities are pretty easy to just like put in, here's what we did. But yeah, let's maybe focus on the objectives and goals and outcomes. Are there things that are missing, or think different ways that you maybe would frame these objectives or outcomes? Or other things that sort of you thought were outcomes that you were working towards that aren't on this list?
Are you sharing your screen, Alyssa?
Oh, I thought I was. Yes, sorry. I didn't realize I wasn't. There we go. That's way better.
So here we're trying to just find the activities that we didn't get to, or?
No, this is like, if we think back, don't worry too much about the activities. I want to focus more on the objectives and goals, but are those like, is this what you felt was supposed to happen? Because oftentimes I think when people do evaluation, it's like, oh, I thought we were doing this. And someone else is like, oh, I thought we were doing this. And so this was the list that like you'd shared with me, Ike, at the beginning of the program. And I don't even know if that's like the most comprehensive list, or maybe you have a different set of objectives or goals, or if how it lines up with what was in the funding. But I think sort of getting on the same page and making sure like, yeah, we all have the same understanding of what was supposed to happen initially is
Gotcha.
a really good place to
Gotcha.
start.
This looks good to me. I want to maybe ask Jamima. Jamima, since you had a different perspective a little bit, since I kind of shared a vision with you before you kind of joined the program, does this reflect what I told you initially? And then when you went through the program, was it mostly in line with what you were told, with what was supposed to happen?
Um, can you repeat? Like, I'm not sure if I know what you're like asking.
I think, yeah, I'm not being super clear either. I think what I'm asking you to think about is like, think back to the beginning of the program, pretend, like put yourself back into day one and like what you wanted to see happen or what was supposed to happen. What were your goals for the program when this started? And does this list kind of capture those things that you really wanted to happen when you were starting out?
Okay. Well, already the first 2 points, I know that like I can clearly remember like asking and mentioning, like I remember we did like a whole Word document or Docs document about our experiences and our stories and stuff like that. So I know that like we kind of stuck to that kind of layout, I guess, of activities to do. So I guess for that part of things, then yeah, it was pretty much like this is what we're gonna do, and that is what we did. So
was there anything else that like you wanted or like goals you had for the program that don't show up on that list, or things that you want, like maybe you wanted to do that, like you wanted to do the program, the goal was to like I'm trying to think of what it might be, but it, like for me it could have been like I wanted to build connections with people I didn't know before, so it's a little bit different than like group members. Maybe that's already there, that's not a good example, but maybe there's some things that like people had wanted to get out of this program that, anyway, if there's not, that's okay, we can move on.
Honestly, for me, like because of COVID, I had no idea what to expect, right? I was kind of just like, I'm gonna be in a kind of program where I'm gonna meet like Congolese. Like in my mind, I was just like, okay, I'm gonna go into this and be a part of a Congolese association. Like that's kind of all I had in mind. Like that's all I could think of because COVID, everything's gonna be on Zoom. There's not really much you could do. So I wasn't expecting anything, if I'm gonna be honest. I was just gonna be like, I'm gonna be a part of a Congolese group. Okay, that's all I want. So I can't really answer that because I knew that there wasn't gonna be like, events and stuff like that to plan for or whatever. So
that's great.
That's really good. I want to hear Felicia's perspective a bit next, because you were also like you heard about the program almost kind of like the youth did. I know you were involved on a deeper level on some of the stuff here, but according to you, is how did we do in terms of like that initial vision we had? So in terms of the initial vision, are there seeing things that aren't reflected in here in terms of what we wanted to do? Like just in that first step there, or like the things we were talking about before the funding even came through, like how we were talking about things, is that all kind of reflected here?
I think for the most part, yeah. When you mean before, like the funding and the things started, do you mean like when we were doing the youth group, like back in those times, like what we had a vision for that, or you mean just like?
I'm talking maybe right around December when we said, okay, come on, we're gonna expand, we're gonna do youth leadership. Like when we started to talk about like this specific project, maybe when you came on board, like officially, in terms of like what we set out to do when we like, like got onto this undertaking. Like, did we is that represented here? Because I think we just have to answer the question of what was supposed to happen,
Well, we kind of talked about that diversity piece, right? Like we kind of talked, like especially with me being one of the only ones not from Congo. So that I don't really see anything on there that reflects that.
Okay.
Mostly just talks about Congo. I need to see it again. There you go.
That's a good point. Yeah, we did mention diversity. We really did. Ok, Papa Daniel, la question ici qu'on est en train de répondre, c'est une question un peu particulière là, particulière, si j'ai prononcé ça proprement. Donc, ce qu'on veut répondre, ou bien ce qu'on veut voir ici, c'est la vision qu'on avait pour le programme. C'était quoi vraiment la vision qu'on avait avant de commencer? On veut voir si ce qu'on a écrit ici représente la vision qu'on avait au début là. Daniel? Oh man.
He's
This is
gone.
what? It's so bad when you're translating all this. Whatever.
Yeah, the one thing I'll throw out there, like I noticed most of these objectives are like specific objectives, except for maybe the last one that Felicia just added, for the youth involved. But I wonder if there were like specific objectives that SOS Congo had around like building capacity of facilitators, or you know, engaging like new youth members to join the organization, maybe was a goal that you had that's maybe not quite represented here, that maybe I've heard or seen something around.
Yeah, I think we wanted to have, we wanted to train 5 facilitators. We wanted to translate facilitation materials into French. We wanted to do leadership training with like 10 to 15 youth. And then for the year, we want to have 300 meaningful connections with youth as a result. So having the youth who are trained and having the trainers, our goal for training them in the first place is to, for the year 2021, have 300. How many did we say actually? Yeah, meaningful interaction with youth.
Yeah.
Ok, Daniel's back. Papa Daniel, t'es là avec nous maintenant?
Oui, oui, j'ai eu un problème de connexion. Je suis là maintenant.
Ok, c'est pas grave. Donc, j'étais en train de traduire un peu là avant. Donc, ce que je disais, c'est, on est en train de demander une question un peu particulière ici. On veut voir c'était quoi notre vision au début. Donc, tout ce qu'on avait dit au commencement, c'était vraiment quoi? Qu'est-ce qui était supposé d'arriver? Donc, on n'est pas vraiment au point là pour répondre à la question de qu'est-ce qu'on a fait. On répond seulement qu'est-ce qu'on voulait faire. Donc, on est là maintenant. Il y a une liste de choses là en anglais. On veut voir si cette liste-là est complète ou bien s'il y a des choses à ajouter.
Oh, oui, j'ai vu la liste. Déjà, si je dois répondre à cette question, parmi nos objectifs, on s'était dit qu'il fallait premièrement initier les jeunes au leadership par rapport à la jeunesse congolaise et donc former des formateurs à leur tour qui seront capables de transmettre ou de parler de l'antiracisme un peu au milieu des jeunes dans leur nous, notre objectif était de les outiller pour qu'à leur tour, qu'ils soient capables d'outiller les autres, qu'ils soient capables de pouvoir parler de ces choses, de tout ce qu'ils auront appris ici, qu'ils soient capables de transmettre aux autres et parler d'une manière efficace du racisme et d'autres sujets. Et puis, l'objectif qu'on s'était fixé, c'était aussi d'avoir une jeunesse consciente par rapport aux situations du moment, donc aux situations qui nous entourent, qui nous touchent directement dans la société. Parce que je me rappelle, une fois, on se disait, on a l'impression que la jeunesse est un peu éloignée par rapport aux faits de la société qui se passent directement. Alors, l'objectif était aussi de les initier et de les intéresser par rapport à ce qui se passait. En gros, c'était former ou révéler le potentiel au milieu de la jeunesse pour qu'à leur tour, qu'ils soient capables de transmettre cela à d'autres jeunes.
Okay, good response. So for him, he's saying that what we were trying to do is in that unveiling youth potential space, we wanted to really train trainers. We wanted them to be given information that they would impart onto other people. Like that was a main a feature of the information that they'll be given not to just be stored within them themselves. So training trainers speaking about certain topics and having a conscious youth, a youth that's aware of current events around them, aware of their history, aware of the things surrounding them. So diving a bit deeper into what we were saying or how we were saying we wanted to impact the youth there. So that's really good. Tonton David, do you have anything to add? Because I know that we were really talking from the beginning to the end. So I think you have a good sense too of what we were trying to accomplish in the beginning, what our objectives were.
Yeah, I think, maybe, maybe okay, yeah. Yeah, like Daniel said it very well. And if anything, I would need to say that our objective was also to, I mean, to come up as a community, and then if I have to evaluate to say something, then I say that the community has formed because we define ourselves, who we are, and we talked about how we can impact as a group and others. So this is the element. So I'm very proud of it. The community has really started. Okay. What was another aspect? The I mean, also related to the community to see, I can reflect that it had a kind of a fear when we succeed to mobilize the group, but it turned out that we had all time we had a meeting. We didn't lack any meeting, but people came. So we see the interest is really built. I mean, in the group, people are interested in what we're doing. Wow, that's what I can add to what is already there. Okay, are you saying diversity? We talk about that and trans possibility.
No, I
I
think.
think.
Sorry, go on.
You there's a moment we wanted to know what really we want to do. We talked to many things that like the idea of having a cultural center. I mean, I don't know, that discussion was related to what that one I'm thinking, but again, I think we still, I mean, we are there, but not yet. So what I'm saying, the, also like someone mentioned, of this corona, I mean, period where we don't have a physical contact, some of the things maybe that's why we have not yet come to do that. I mean, to accomplish them, but they are in our mind. They are in our mind. We are moving there.
I think you've really stepped us into sort of the next stage, which is thinking about, okay, if these are our goals, like what have we made progress on, and where have we done a good job, and what have we been working on? And so maybe let's just step into that and given time. I think that's like the really important sort of evaluative conversation to be had. And so I've moved those new ones into this table. I've jumped across the activities that took place because I think that's pretty easy. Someone can just like throw that into a report to report on what actually happened. But I think where the like really valuable conversation is how well did we reach those goals and objectives? Were there other unexpected outcomes? And how do we know this? Like what tells us that that's what's happening? And I think this is where we can draw on those things that we talked about before, our own experiences, what we saw in the sessions, but also that survey that was shared, and what's there. So maybe let's just start going through, and maybe let's pick a couple to go through together. I think that like the, I don't know, does anyone have one that they want to start with and talk about, or that's really important? Maybe the building community one, or the facilitators and training. I don't know. I could go for it.
I think we can just start at the top, and then we can just give quick responses. Maybe let's not give too much time for everyone to respond, but let me just say, did we reach it? Did we not reach it? And how do we know? And then move on after that. Let's start at the top.
Okay, we'll do rapid fire. Yeah. So first one, understanding perceptions and ideas of what being from Congo means to different people. Do we think we achieved it, or how well did we reach it?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Sweet. How do we know we reached it?
We're able to have the training sessions. We had sessions talking about Congo and the Congo diaspora for you, Felicia, and then had actually, yeah, I don't know. That's how I know. Maybe other people want to rapid fire. How do we know we reached this?
I think your youth feedback said that really strongly. Like there's a number of comments in there that's I have a better understanding of the history of Congo, or
yeah, I was about to say that, we're told the history, you know, being Congo and from, and we inform on that.
Yeah. Does anyone have any like really good story or like example of that like sticks out to them, maybe of a conversation or something that they had or something that they saw that was like, oh yeah, I really knew that someone was getting that because of that?
I think one of the reactions that I had, I don't know who said that in the conference, said that, he said that he or she never heard that if he was not this group, that would have not got that part of sorry. And particularly, I would say even when I showed us some figures, big figures of Congo, and I was surprised that people, many of us did not know even who was the first president of the country. It was difficult for people to know that, but we learned that who was the first president of the country. That really was very significant to me. So yeah, the information is passed. I don't know if you remember that particular time.
I was there. I remember that one. Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Think about, recognize how being from the Congo affects your stories and experiences. Did we reach it? How well did we reach it? And you could do this like we're doing yes or no just to do it fast. I mean, you could do this as a score out of 10. You could do this as a red, yellow, green. You could do this as like a whole bunch of different.
Yes, for this one. And
yes.
Because when like they're sharing, like they were sharing about like not being there before, or they're sharing about like how they came as they were younger and how they want to go back and experience it as they're older, and how Congo is now than it was back then.
We talked about the difference between generations, what being Congolese American or Congolese Canadian means, the disconnects that can exist.
Sweet. Next one, build community and connection between group members. I'm going to go with yes.
Despite COVID, yes.
I think there was a lot of comments like this. Again, like you could go to that youth feedback again and pull out like specific quotes and stuff like that from there, saying like there was good group dynamics, I think was one of the quotes. Yeah, what else? Tells us that there was community connection. I think like attendance is a big one here. Like most sessions had a bunch of people at all of them, right? And so that shows that there was some form of like connection or community, because people don't show up when there's not, right? Are there other things that tell us that there was good community connection, things you saw, things you...
We felt comfortable with each other, able to grow the community, like when we invited others, like when we had our little post-colonial discussion, people from other places came, so it looks like we're building. Yeah. Papa Daniel, je vois ta main levée.
Oui, seulement dans Build Community. Ce que j'ai senti aussi, c'est la capacité de la jeunesse à s'adapter au sujet qui était donné et la manière de répondre. On n'a pas senti l'écart ou bien une certaine, si je peux me le permettre, une certaine immaturité. Tout ce qu'on a compris, ça nous a permis d'évaluer le niveau de la jeunesse que nous avons et la maturité avec laquelle ils participaient aux réunions. Non seulement qu'ils participaient, mais aussi qu'ils participaient physiquement, mais aussi tu sentais qu'ils apportaient quelque chose. Ils ont apporté quelque chose à nos réunions et avec une grande maturité. On n'a pas senti l'écart ou dire que l'écart de connaissance, si je peux le dire.
Yeah, so in these meetings, there was no gap in terms of like experience, no gap in terms of level of engagement, no gap in terms of just feeling like what you're bringing to the group matters. And it felt like we were building something. We were different age groups, different this, but we were able to build a certain culture, maybe I can say, where our people took things seriously, and the group had its own kind of dynamic that was quite positive there.
Great. Explore traditional and cultural understanding of leadership. How did we reach that?
Yes. I'm the only one talking, but yes, through history, we did a lot of history, looked up historical examples of leaders. We did historical examples of change leadership and change management in different times. Oui, oui.
Et je pense que dans explorer le leadership traditionnel et le comprendre, je me rappelle, le point qu'on a touché, c'était celui aussi de la dame, de la femme Kimpavita, par rapport à son leadership en son temps, et ce qu'elle faisait dans ce temps-là. On a dit ceci, qu'elle a apporté ce qu'on appelait le syncrétisme. Elle voulait mettre ensemble la religion traditionnelle qui était déjà en Afrique, mais aussi la religion qui venait de l'Occident. On a parlé ceci, qu'il y avait déjà des royaumes bien établis, et dans ces royaumes, par exemple le royaume Congo avec Grand K, il y avait le leadership qui était exercé. Il y avait aussi le royaume Lunda, il y avait le leadership qui était exercé. Alors on a compris que c'était seulement quelque chose qui était déjà fait, mais on n'avait pas le terme qu'il faut. Alors quand le terme est venu leadership, on comprend que ça se faisait déjà, mais ça n'avait pas de nom. Alors pour nous, ça nous a permis de comprendre aussi le leadership dans ce sens-là.
So it was good historical understanding of leadership, looking back at the context of which this leadership was carried out in the past. So you looked at the example of Kimpavita, the Congolese lady, or young lady, the youth that we spoke about, taking a look at her story and pointing out the aspects of leadership that we never really isolated or we never really discussed as being cases of leadership, looking back at the old historical examples from the Congo Kingdom, Lunda Kingdom, and taking a look at some of these characters and studying their leadership style or how they were innovative in certain contexts, and yeah, take a look at that.
Cool. I'm going to throw out one quick comment here. I think this is good, great evidence and how do we know, listing those things that we talked about. And I think like the goal was to explore. And so that does speak to that. I think if the goal had like sometimes I think in goals or how do we know, we sometimes share like, here's what we shared, but that doesn't necessarily always translate to what people actually learned or took away. And so sometimes looking like a level deeper is really good to say, okay, yes, we shared these things, but like, how do we know that that was taken in, contextualized, what's changed for youth because of that? I don't think you necessarily have to do that here in this case, especially because the goal is framed as like explore this idea. And like by saying we talked about all these things, you're saying you explored it. But if it was like youth have a deeper understanding of traditional and cultural leadership was your goal, then you might need to like think about like, how do we know that was something that they took in and really like contextualized, and just sort of another deeper level there. So I'm just throwing that out as like a bit of a flag in thinking about yeah, the how do we know part. And I think that goes for all of them, but I just sort of like flag because it was like what you're sharing is great and it is what you talked about, but there's like another step in that, and like, how do we know youth are learning this and what are they doing with it? What's changing for them because of that?
Could we like evidence for that? Could that be like discussions we had at the end of the conversation where, okay,
so like youth brought up questions that like demonstrated blah, blah, blah means that like, yeah, they've actually like taken this and processed it. Or, you know, someone said they like their son or daughter like came home and told them about all this stuff that they learned. Like that's an example of like that. Yeah, like they've actually taken that in. And anyway, it's just a like another level to think about. Like I think what you have here is good, but something to think about going forward.
Okay, perfect. Maybe we can just do yes, no for the rest of them with the time we have, and then we can figure out how to flesh it out later.
Sounds good. Oh, sorry. Scrolling. Gain knowledge of timelines, other facilitation tools that aid in uncovering meaning. Who am I? Questions, spark questions. So this was more about like facilitation tools and like facilitating sort of personal reflection within the group.
Yes.
Yes?
I'd say yes.
Yes. Cool. Introduction to concepts of safe spaces, talking circles, private and public stories.
Yes.
Yes. Sweet. That diversity piece, bringing in other experiences, not just Congo.
Yes.
They're all yeses. Good work, everyone. SOS Congo trains 5 facilitators speaking about different topics, sharing their learning.
So far, yes. Papa Daniel, ça c'est vous, pas tonton David. Donc, vous étiez là, Felicia.
Ouais. Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Was there 5? I think there's only 4. No? Is there 5?
Tonton, hold on. Felicia, Tonton David, Daniel, Gaylor, Labi. 5. We did 5. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Translate facilitation materials into French.
Daniel.
Yeah. Oui.
Yes. Oui.
Parce que.
Oui.
Yeah.
Oui.
I like that you took that we.
300 meaningful connections. This was for the whole year, Ike, that goal of 300 meaningful connections for youth. So we don't necessarily have to have achieved that yet. Is that true?
Yeah, but I think, yeah, we are on track though. It's going pretty good. We're having lots of conversations and connections. So good there.
Yeah, and then this one I didn't necessarily word super well. I was trying to, you might want to like think about it a bit better, how to word it. It's my wording, not from what you were saying. Have youth engaged with the organization and leadership going forward, and then leadership for youth to speak about racism, current events. So there's kind of almost 2 pieces in there, but you can decide whether you want to leave them together or separate them. We'll keep them together for now. But it's sort of that like youth stepping into current events, speaking about racism, leadership.
I'm so impressed that most of our youth stayed on past the program. So the fact that Jemima's still here engaged and doing evaluation after the program's done, I think is good. There's most of them. I think we lost one, then he came back. I want to go on and do like the specific like anti-racism training, like to add on to the introductory kind of piece that we already did about it. So it looks not bad for that one either.
Any other thoughts? Anyone? Okay, cool. So those are all the goals, and like you said, yeah, I think you can like go back and fill out sort of some of that, like how do we know, or experiences. This is something maybe you could share with others, and like have people who aren't here. Levi might have some thoughts around that he wants to put in, or some of the others. And I think sort of the next step is that reflect thing. We won't do it right now because of time, but I think like once you have those goals, like, and you've sort of said, here's what we've achieved or haven't achieved, like the next step is to think about why did we achieve that or why didn't, and that's where that learning piece really comes through. And so maybe that's a bit less like for your funders or funding reports, it's more for your internal learning, that says like, okay, like what really did make us be successful with those things, or why was there a difference between what we planned to do and what we actually did? What are some things that we could do differently in the future to help us get there? And so I think that's sort of the next step, is like taking those outcomes, and your where you got to with them, but then thinking about like why and what helped us get there. And that's what's really going to like sort of drive that whole circle. And I'm going to go around in back into your plans for the next time. Because that's where you're going to see changes. That's going to be where you're like, no, we're not going to do this session anymore. We're going to do this session, or like, yeah, we did good with this part, but like we didn't do as good with this part as the other part. So maybe we want to like invest in that part of the facilitation a little bit more. And that's where that learning can come from. And then the last thing I have, and I'll share this with you guys to go forward, is just about this sharing. And we talked about it a little bit in the what we wanted to share. And I put down sort of that funder is an audience you have. And so they want to know targets, impact stories. Like you mentioned, like more community and sharing like what happened and the learning. And so then you can think about, once you've done all this, you can think about, okay, how are we going to share that with these people? Who's going to take that and report on it? Who's going to take that and create that learning piece? Now that we have, as a group, we've decided on all this information, this learning, who's going to share what, where, and how do we want to go forward with it? So we got a little rush. We didn't quite get through everything, but I'm sure you guys will be having ongoing conversations, or maybe thinking about how you can bring this in going forward. And if there's questions or anything you want to talk about, feel free to reach out.
Wow, I think let's all give Alyssa a round of applause first. Thank you. This was work, then you got us all on track here. For everyone who's not on camera, send something. No, honestly, it's good. I think what we're going to end up doing here, we're going to take some of this away. I want to fill in some of this information. I want to create a shared document with all of us. I'll call us the evaluator crew. That's what I was calling you guys to Alyssa when we were trying to plan this before. So it's definitely not something everybody's going to be interested in, but really happy for those who are here. If you can share this PowerPoint with us, Alyssa, I'm not sure. We're going to put all of this online. We're going to wait. I'm going to post this video online to wait for everyone to kind of watch it and get through it. And then let's try to find ways to, we're going to send you, Ashley and I already started the evaluation for the funders. So that one, I think we're good. But I think for our own internal learnings and maybe a community facing thing is something that I want us to think about doing, something we can tell the community, we did this, we've reached out to this many people, this is where we're at. But honestly, I think this session went great. Again, thank you so much for taking the time, Alyssa. And I'll be in touch with you guys. I think we're gonna make a WhatsApp group and just have a, or I'm not gonna do it. Ashley is gonna make a WhatsApp group, and Ashley is gonna create a Google whatever document that we can all get into. So thanks for sticking around, guys, and I'll be connecting via WhatsApp.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for letting me
Thank
come.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. See you.
Merci.